So I know it's not Mark, it's your time. So we might end somewhere near time. Okay. You guys have heard the Miller joke, haven't you? It's been around for a long time. There's Eastern, what is it called? Eastern Standard Time? Eastern Standard and Central and Rocky Mountain. There's all the time zones, or the time zones, and then there's Miller time. Miller time bears no resemblance to any of those time zones, because Tim and Mark Miller are in their own time zone. It's called the Miller time zone. So that's been a joke around the church forever. Okay, so life is not designed to meet our needs, but what life needs is supplied by God for our appropriation. That's point number 2. Outline point number 2. This discussion is conducted in a different fashion. It is pointed and stands out sharply as we go through the book, as it should. Because if you just go through this book, now I know lots of Christian people who go through this book and they go, oh, this is definitely a finely honed steel of woe. I'm going to die and nothing I'm doing has any meaning. No. You didn't read well enough going through here. You got to pay more attention to certain parts than you do to other parts. So it is pointed and it stands out sharply as we go through the book. So there's that. Number 3, the physical must be subordinated to the spiritual. This is not heavily developed. Oh, this is
page 4. Oh.
Yeah, page 4, but you have Roman numeral 3 up at the top. We're 1, 2, 3, 4, just each following the pages. So this is number 3 in the fourfold outline of the book. The physical must be subordinated to the spiritual. This is not heavily developed as the former 2, but is very strong in the book. Part of the argument grows from the satisfaction of the physical. Yeah, because they keep telling us over and over again we're eventually going to die. And part of us, it'd been better if we would have been born. That'll get to you after a while. Apart from the insecurity of the physical. There are several passages that treat the concept, and we generalize the following. So we'll come back to this. The number 4 part, dependence, it's right in the same page there. Dependence on strong providence is required in Ecclesiastes. I thought about putting strong dependence on strong providence is required, but I'm not sure grammatically it makes much difference, because if you have a strong belief in a sovereign God, you have a strong belief in His sovereignty and His providential care. In Ecclesiastes, this concept has been confused occasionally with fatalism. Not quite occasionally, but a lot of the time. Most often it's confused with fatalism. But the driving force in Ecclesiastes is not fatalism. It is a personal God, not an unknowing force, but an intellectual faculty to whom we are accountable. And so I got the scriptures here. So that's our 4-part outline that we're going to work on. We're going to work on each one of those 4 parts, and you have tons of scriptures under there. So at this point, I want to get in my exhortation for next week. Spend some time here with the syllabus and the Book of Ecclesiastes in the Bible, and start looking up some of those passages and seeing the concepts they amplify and give to us out of the book. And all I'm doing this morning is running through the parts of what we're looking at here. The next part, which is what I choose to call the crown jewels of Ecclesiastes. Based on the amount of time that I've studied through the book, I came up, I think there's 16 of them. These I call are the crown jewels of Ecclesiastes. You're reading through there, and there's this, this is a jewel. Yes. This applies to life, it applies to death, it applies to people, it applies to governments, it does whatever. And so you might find your own crown jewel in there. In fact, I hope maybe you do. But we're going to look at a couple of these here real quick, 4 of them actually. And we'll be coming back to the crown jewels, but that might be a good place for you to start, is start looking at the crown jewels of Ecclesiastes. Here's one that Eileen and I discuss almost daily. We have a little word or two of discussion of this. It's Ecclesiastes 1:4. A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. Now, we were having this discussion last night because right now we have no grandkids. We need a grandkid, but we have none. Because Kate went off to college and Colin is going off to training, and so we have all of our grandkids here are gone, and we have no grandkids closer than Cincinnati, so we don't want a dog. We want a grandkid. And so we're talking about this last night, and every once in a while, one of us will quote this to the other one. A generation goes, and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. Now that ties in with some other passages in here, some other crown jewels, like no matter who you are and how important you are, a few months after you're dead, you're forgotten. It's basically my paraphrase of it. We can't name all the presidents. We can't name important people that influenced the world, let alone just normal people. And so let's not get overexcited about our own importance on this planet. A generation goes. And so I think we need to note how God put it in order. So Eileen and I usually, after our 2 or 3 sentence discussion of this passage, we go, yep, and we're part of the going generation. Now, this is true biblically in another sense. If we look back at God's announcement to Adam and Eve and him talking to them about what they did with eating the forbidden fruit, in the day that you eat thereof, dying you shall die, is the way it's phrased in the Hebrew. Dying you shall die. You shall begin to die the minute sin enters the world. And so every little baby that we look at, you want to look at them and go, you're really cute, and you got a lot of life ahead of you, but you're dying. Right now you're dying. You're under the sentence of death. And your body is in the process of dying. While you're in your teens and while you're in your 20s and 30s, dying you shall die. So a generation is going and a generation is coming. So I've already said, given our sobering thought here, we are no more important or less important than preceding or coming generations of people. Paul, writing to Corinthians, phrased it this way: don't think more highly of yourselves than you ought to think. You're one of multiple generations of people that have lived on the planet. So that's one of the crown jewels. Eileen and I talk about that one almost every day. And we have for years, not like this is a new thing to us. So Ecclesiastes, down at, I have these numbered. I didn't number them on the page, but I went through after I got my copy here and numbered them. This is number 5, so you might like to go down through there and number them. That way when we refer to them, we can pick them out real easily. Ecclesiastes 3:11, a crown jewel. God has set eternity in our hearts. Now this goes to our principle number 1, sobering thought. No member of the human race will ever find complete fulfillment apart from knowing God. God has not designed stuff on this planet to give us fulfillment. Knowing Him is our fulfillment. And my classic illustration with that is Ernest Hemingway. Pretty sure everyone is familiar with who Ernest Hemingway was. The first book I read of his was For Whom the Bell Tolls. I think I read it in about the 6th grade. At that time I didn't understand. It was about the Spanish Civil War. I was all tied up in the people in the book. And but Ernest Hemingway did it all on this planet. He dined and drank wine with the crowned heads of Europe. He traveled all over the world. He received literary eminence. He did everything any human being would want to do on the planet. And he sat down one day with his double-barrel classic shotgun and blew his head off because he said, this world is just a nasty, mean place and there's no meaning to it. Well, of course not without God, Ernest. Heavens. You know, that's how we're designed, to know God. And you can do all kinds of stuff on this planet, but if you never know God, you've missed the whole point of human existence. So, that's a crown jewel in Ecclesiastes. And here's one, down it's the bottom one of the page. It's number 11. Ecclesiastes 8:11. Because an evil deed is not punished quickly, more evil will be done. Okay, the way that's phrased is because the sentence against an evil deed is not executed quickly, therefore the hearts of the sons of men will be prone to do more evil. Which flies right in the face of current thought everywhere in America that capital punishment doesn't stop crime. Well, yes, it does. That guy that just got executed will never again commit a crime. And God is the one that put it in His book. Okay? So don't argue with me about it. Argue with God about it. Argue with the right person. I'm just quoting God. And He said, this is how I made the universe to operate after sin, that he who sheds man's blood, by men will his blood be shed. And so this is the principle we're operating on. And because you don't execute this quickly, more people will go, oh, we can get away with that, so let's do more of the same kind of stuff. That's to put it in colloquial terms, that's how the passage goes. And we only have to be 1 year old to have watched this work, 2 years old, to have watched this work its way out in America during COVID. And, okay, we can burn buildings down and we can riot in the streets, and as long as they didn't do anything about it, we'll just keep doing it. And so that's how it works. I will, every once in a while, maybe you're not ready for this really ugly scene. I saw this on TV once. It was a broadcast from China. And this has been maybe 20 years ago I saw this. And they were talking about how they deal with drugs in China. And so they caught like 20 drug dealers. And they bring them out to a big amphitheater like, Ohio State Stadium or wherever. And they bring 100,000 people in. And then they line these 20 guys up on their knees across the center of the stadium. And a guy walked down behind each one of them and shot him in the back of the head. When he emptied his one pistol, he held his hand out and got another one and shot the rest of them. And he said, we don't let people do drugs. We deal with drug dealers. Now that's ugly. I will admit that. I'll be the first to say that's an ugly picture. But God says that sentences against evil deeds should be executed quickly. So no one else will get the idea that they can get away with something like that. So, again, you want to think a little about that. That's what Ecclesiastes is for. Okay, and we've already read number 14, which is over on your next page, the next from the bottom. Ecclesiastes 9:11-12, the crown jewel. The race is not to the swift, the battle is not to the warrior. Sobering thought. See, I put the sobering thought we're supposed to have with each one of these, which is for us to meditate on. Time and chance are the vicious enemies of the human race. For time and chance overtake every member of the human race. Like a fish caught in a net and like a bird in a snare, we don't know the time when the evil event is going to fall upon us. So these are the crown jewels. I'm going to stop here for a minute before we move over to the 10 vanities for a second, because you all sort of have this deer in the headlights look, which happens periodically because George and I are so different. See, George likes all this stimulating conversation when he teaches. I think teaching, my job is to get a bunch of facts in your head. Just as much as I can cram in there in a shortest period of time. And then later on we can think about it and meditate on it and discuss it. So I'm going to stop here for a second and see if you have any thoughts or observations or analysis or whatever on what we've covered so far here, as we're just kind of making our big jump through what we're going to look at in more detail. Everybody see the big 4 parts of the book? Everybody see that okay? Now, which passage have we looked at this morning you thought, man, that's a nasty, mean passage? That's just like, right in my face. Tells me that life is just awful. Well, it is under the sun, S-U-N. And it's still partially awful for people under the sun, S-O-N, but no matter what form of government we might happen to live under on this planet or what time phrase, knowing God is the issue. Because He can give hope and strength and overcoming and all kinds of stuff, no matter if we're like John Bunyan and we spend a long time in prison. Look how John Bunyan came out of prison. Oh my gosh. Prison refined him and made him into the person he was. So, anyway,